extraordinary film. And I guess I wanted to start by asking, and I have to ask this, even though you talked to me about it before, how long have you been thinking about Nosferatu? How far back does this go?
I saw the Muir film when I was 9, and it really it impacted me greatly. Mac Schreck's performance and the makeup design, of course, and also that it took the Stoker novel and it condensed it into a really simple, beautiful fairy tale. And then when I was in high school, I did a senior directed play of Nosferatu with a friend, and the artistic director of a local theater company saw that and invited us to do a more professional version of it at his theater. And this cemented the fact that I wanted to be a director, and it made Nosferatu sort of, as precious as it may sound, like a part of my persona or being as someone who's trying to make creative work. And then this film that you guys just saw was about 10 years or so in the making.
And there's so many forerunners in terms of vampire films, and also Nosferatu specifically. There's the original one, there's the Herzog remake, there's Shadow of the Vampire, which is kind of this black comic vision of it with Willem Dafoe as the monster. How did you decide what this movie was going to look like and what this Nosferatu was going to look like, especially because the original one is so iconic that people don't usually change them?
Well, I felt that it would be foolish to try to update it or do it better because Max Schreck's performance is so incredible. But also, part of my approach is to, for better or for worse, I'm obsessed with this idea of historical accuracy and form of the vampire, and that is very much an abstract idea. But of course, I felt that as the cinematic vampire evolved into Edward Cullen, who is no longer scary, that if I went back to the folklore that was written by and about people who actually believed that vampires existed and were terrified of them, that there must be something good there. So these early Baltic and Slavic folk vampires were walking putrid, maggot-ridden corpses, which sounded pretty cool. And so then the question became, what does a dead Transylvanian nobleman actually look like? And the answer to that question is on the screen.
Okay, so this gets us into the question of, this is always part of the calculus when you make a movie with a monster in it. When do we show the monster? How much of the monster do we show? From what angle do we show it? How much light and shadow is there? And when do we finally get a look at the whole monster? All of these things can sort of make a movie fly or sink. What kind of conversations did you all have about that?
Well, I didn't think you wanted to see it until the print was kind of the big reveal. So it's a reveal, it's a reveal with Thomas. So then it's just trying to find all the ways you can obscure something. Whether it's the back of something or it's so close it's just the eyes, you don't see it. Light, distance, fog. You think of all the check, and then the first until you see the crypt, it's kind of all those things. You do see him a little bit in the library at the end, in a wide, but then you only see it briefly, and then he's in front of the light, and then we have that tool. So,
I mean, if you looked like that, you wouldn't want your house guests to know, right? I mean, David, do you want to talk about also how the makeup was designed to help with this?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of made sure.
Did the prosthetics and Jarin Blaschke is the cinematographer.
I mean, the job was to kind of, it's one of those strange things, is how much to reveal, how much not to reveal. Even while sculpting it, there's a question of having one lamp on it in a dark room so that you can use that lamp and just pull it around and see what kind of shapes register within a certain light source. This was all really, really important, and the decay and the rot, that was really important too. we had to make sure that there was a lot of rot and decay in certain areas, but then in other areas it was a much more gentle sort of sweep forward on those kind of gruesome things, and that's all done on purpose, obviously, Robert, so that you can, choose. You have a choice as to what you want to reveal and when and everything else. So yeah, it's quite a challenge.
I'm going over this. I'm sure, this is one of these situations where I'm at a loss as to who to direct a question to, because everybody has a piece of this. The David White, who did the special makeup, Traci, makeup, Suzanne, hair, Craig, production design, Linda, costume designer, Jarin, of course, the cinematographer. Everybody has to be on the same page, right? And you're talking to each other and saying, this isn't working, is there anything you can do to help? Like what was the physical, logistical process of doing this like? For anybody?
Well, I mean, one of the nice things is we've worked, most of us, all of us, have worked together over and over and over again. So it's strange, it's almost like a family. Yes, we talk a lot, but it's not really formal. Jarin shows up in the office and
I'll just pop in, and yeah.
And
But I can't find you, then it's somebody else to then.
right, and I have to retranslate it.
Right.
And figure it out. So it is the joy of doing this is that we have all worked together so often.
Except me.
Except for this one. But she's really nice.
Well, I was thinking in the lobby, we were having conversations about different aspects of the creature, and I was intrigued by whose responsibility is what. Like that little tuft of hair that Nosferatu refuses to cut, maybe that's all he's got. Was there a hair wrangler for that one piece? How many people were working on the nose? What's the maintenance like on the sort of the sweat and slime quotient?
There's an army behind that. No, we had Stuart Richards and Vicky Holt, key sort of artists, looking after Bill throughout the day. But there was at least 6 people back there, all running around looking after certain aspects of it. You've got to remember that even the hair, the forelock, and the moustache was prepped in the morning, prepped in the evening, and during the day they go through certain situations where they need, maintenance and looking after. So there's a whole pit stop crew ready to do what they have to do, during this situation.
Suzanne and Traci, I wanted to talk to you about hair and makeup for a second in period. I'm really kind of relentless and almost off-putting in my judgment of period films, where it's like, oh, those are 2024 eyebrows. I didn't see any of that here.
No, it's one thing I love about working with Rob is it has to be true to the period. And it has to be realistic to what they would actually have, instead of like period film shot in the 70s where they have a 70s beauty makeup, or even Nosferatu was made in the 20s. When I was looking at it, it's like 1920s black and white makeup. Like it doesn't really apply to the realism of it.
What do you do to sort of stay centered in that? I mean, what do you have to look at? Paintings, drawings? I mean, it's pre-photography.
It is. Robert does give us a lot of reference in the Bibles, and a lot of it is paintings and portraits, and also just what you would just naturally think of, like what they would look like in that time period, like their lifestyle. Like the Hardings are higher, more prestigious people, so they would be cleaner, as opposed to someone like Willem, who lives with the cats. He's more eclectic, so his character would be a bit more broken down. So it's stuff like that, and then adding character traits like Willem smokes the pipe, so it's adding the nicotine to his teeth and mustache, and his fingers where he holds the pipe, and certain things that would naturally happen.
Suzanne, how much of a stickler are you for making things in period? Like, can you give yourself the liberty of adding a dollop of something to hold a strand of hair in place, or no hairspray?
No, I don't.
Thank God, no.
I try and keep it true to how it would have been done. And so for Willem, for instance, if you look at his set, it's very dusty and dirty. So that's one of my pet hates, is when people break down hair, it just naturally becomes greasy. But it doesn't. the dirtier it gets, the woollier it gets. So it's conversation with the sets, and it's a lot of collaboration between us all, and with your costumes. I have to go with the costumes so that they don't jar, because the hair should just fit in. It shouldn't be a statement. It doesn't get paid to act.
Do you have a lot of wigs, or is it all manipulation of actual hair, or what?
It was a mixture. Lily had one up, one down. I like to keep it simple. So it's a mixture of also their own hair being coloured or styled. But I use Marcel tongs, oil, water. That's basically it, really. And do it how it would have been done.
Craig, I wanted to talk to you a bit more about the sets. How many physical sets were there? Like, what's the percentage of actual things that existed versus things that were finished with CG and post?
Well, most of what you see is a set, I would say. I mean, there's a lot of CG, a lot of tweaking that happens throughout the whole thing. And most of the sets we built. Most of what you see on screen was built. The Corvin Castle, which is Orlok's castle, the exterior, that was shot in Romania. And then there's a couple of courtyards. The hospital was actually a location in Moldova, in Romania. But other than that, I think pretty much we built the sets, all the rest of them. And then there were, the streets only went so high, so they were propped up, and then in the distance, the Angela Barton's visual effects supervisor was added to it.
But you also have to some chagrin, the sets are popped up in CG, but you have to put in some sort of material so the light falls in the street as it would if it's taller. So that's,
Right.
That's another aspect of things.
I was going to say for you and for Craig and also for Robert, you're very precise with your frames. You're very precise with your movements. Do the sets ever get built for the shots?
Yeah, I mean, that's part. I mean, the reasons to build virtually everything is, one, to get the architectural specificity of the worlds. Like, we scouted northern Germany and cities that looked like this fictional town of Visburg, but because of World War II, there's no town that had enough stuff. So it was clear that we needed to build this massive backlot to get this world. Jarin and I designed these long, elaborate shots that are storyboarded with our storyboard artist, Adam Pescott. But they evolve as we talk with Craig, and Jarin's often, with a viewfinder, always with the viewfinder on Craig's semi-built sets, saying, can we move the door a little over here, or a little over there? Because the sets are built to accommodate these shots. We only use crane and dolly. There's no Steadicam, so the operation's a little bit more cumbersome. And so oftentimes a wall will have to move while we are shooting a shot, midway through to get the camera around to make it work.
A lot of times the sets are built for a focal length, because we like to use a certain focal length because it just has the same, it's like this, which is a 35 millimeter, and it's, which is, we find just like a focal length that's sort of a mix between just enough context for a scene where you can actually block a scene that goes from close up to wide to medium and stack things in a fluid way, but also is flat enough to be a bit storybook, so that might be a little longer than some might choose to use, but one use a 35, so the sets generally have to be a little narrower and longer. Even the simple shots like in the mausoleum, I was extending that out and then pushing the walls in, which maybe isn't accurate in 3 dimensions, but looks perfect in 2 dimensions.
Linda, how on the costume design, how constricting were these? Was there any latitude at all for the actors, or did they have to just pretend it's 1830 and deal with it?
You mean in terms of period accuracy and comfort,
Yeah.
and being in corset all day and things like that?
Yeah.
The actors were all really incredible. They certainly embraced anything that was historically correct. They wanted always to know what would it actually be, how would I sit, how would I stand, how would we make love, how would my clothes come off, I've got so many of them, so they really did actually, Lily, Rose, and Emma were always in fittings, completely fascinated by everything. So there wasn't really, the liberties that were taken were more in terms of the period, like for instance with the mourning clothing, in reality there would have or should have been absolutely no shine, no embellishment, but because we start that particular sequence, and it's a very important sequence at the end of the film, we start that in daylight and then we move into night, and we're in night with torchlight and with firelight. So really there needed to be some reflection from the fabric so that we could see the outlines and silhouettes. But other than that, I don't think that we really took I don't think we took that many liberties. I think it was embraced.
Let's walk through one sequence, and I'm just going to start with Robert, and we'll kind of work our way down here. But I'm really curious about the first scene where we kind of get a look at Nosferatu. Nicholas Hoult is doing some of the most incredible fear acting that I think I've ever seen there, and it seems as if Nosferatu is everywhere at once. And I'm wondering, is that one person? Or is there more than one person? Like, how did you pull that off?
Movie magic. Yeah. Now, because Bill had such incredible hand acting, I wanted it to always be to be Bill. So there is in that first scene, it was actually he had a shadow double who I think only ended up maybe doing one thing, and then I think we might have even replaced him with Bill in the end, because Bill just had he was Nosferatu.
But even just shadows of the hand on the wall in various places, it's always Bill.
Yeah, it's always Bill.
Pulling out of makeup, even though it probably cost something,
Well,
there would be scenes where we'd be shooting a scene with Lily Rose and Emma, and Bill would be there like in an Adidas tracksuit with just the hand on, doing stuff.
You start out in that scene. It's silhouettes. It's heavy shadow. It's almost like a cutout of this thing. And then I feel like, unless my eyes deceive me, there's a shot where he's in front of the fire and you can't quite see his face.
Is this in the castle?
Yeah.
The dinner.
The dinner, and then
Hospitality scene.
the hospitality. Yes, and then we see a version of that shot again, and I feel like we do see his face. Like we can see where his, what is that, a voyeur's cap or something?
Sure.
Where it ends and the face begins.
Yeah, I mean it's like everything else. We're trying to make it look like what it would be. I tend to I don't have a lot of imagination with lighting, just pick the best version of what it would be. So, I'll do things to work with Craig, like where should this fireplace be? Where can it be?
That was a good example. When they designed that set, and the spiral staircase, if you remember, we must have moved that an inch here, inch there.
Yeah, because that was had to be. That was actually a 28 millimeter, and and I wanted the camera to move in a straight line from the staircase through a doorway, through another doorway into the space, and then have a good composition right there. But you don't want to kind of fudge it as you go. You want a straight line, because that.
So that's actually
feels
one
like
shot.
something.
That's not like digitally stitched together. That's actually one.
Oh, it's stitched. Don't worry, but it's still designed like it's a single thing. You have like one camera move that goes up and you find a cut point. You can't do it with an actor in shot, so you have to go up and then start pushing, get the actor out of shot, and then you run out of crane. Then you have to put the crane base someplace else, and then you start with that and run. Have enough overlap where they can stitch it, which is going to be without an actor, and then land on the end frame. and then you get inside the hall, and then Thomas walks into the shot, and then you pick, but you have that flickering bit where you can hide a scene there, and then you dolly over. But we're moving the sets to get like these,
The geometry right.
Yeah,
we're trying to get the geometry right.
Can I say the staircase is wrong? Or?
Yes, the staircase is wrong.
Yeah, it should be
Unique.
Well, they should be going clockwise, and we had to make it counterclockwise to accommodate the shot.
But if you're
But that's
if you're an ancient occultist, you can have an anti-clockwise
You
staircase.
can. There are examples of it, so we're not.
In the southern
But really, just to get a straight line, because that has a different feeling than you're sort of finding it as you go, and just land a shot with certainty. Certainly in the castle.
How exact is the blocking in this movie? Like, is there any latitude for the actor to do something different?
No?
Not really, no.
Isn't it a lot of pressure to decide before you even set foot on set, these are my shots? I mean, obviously that's the way it used to be done, but it's not done as often now for a variety of reasons.
The actors embraced it, and were excited to do it. And I think that doing press with them over the months, there's been a lot of discussion that because of the restriction, in a way, it enabled them to be more in the moment with the stuff that they were doing, because they weren't having to consider anything but exactly what they needed to do in the moment, and nothing else. But one of the things that, as an audience member, I personally like these long, unbroken takes, because I get more absorbed into the story and the film, because I'm like experiencing time, without the edits. Not, obviously there are plenty of scenes with shot reverse shot in this film, and and that makes a lot of sense, and seemed to be the right choice. But that's part of the reason why I as an audience member, I like these. But also making them is very enjoyable, because everyone is really engaged on set, and it's a very collaborative set where Lily is counting on Willem, who's counting on Ralph, who's counting on Aaron, and they're counting on the focus puller and the camera operator and the dolly pusher, and the carpenter has to move the wall out of the way while we're doing
like blocking windows to not get a camera shadow, and then reveal it when you turn back around.
So you got people running around on the set doing stuff, but they're sort of hidden.
Yes, it makes for a very, very focused set where everybody feels like they are part of making the scene happen.
Did you? What parts of your theatrical experience helped in making a film like this?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think people talk about the blocking as being more like theater because of these long takes, but I don't. It's not something that I can consider.
Yeah, I don't know if you can compare. I never did theater, but I can't imagine that 2 dimensions is much like 3 dimensions. But
Maybe also the rehearsal process.
Yeah. There's a long rehearsal process, and also this film, because the cast was larger. So oftentimes when Jarin was doing long lighting setups, we would be in the green room continuing to rehearse the blocking before we came to set again.
What was the most difficult thing throughout the shoot? Like, was there one thing that you constantly had to keep an eye on or battle?
Son?
Yeah, basically making sure we always had cloud coverage, and the focus features were incredible partners, and they allowed so much freedom and this total support. But that was the one thing they were kind of freaked about, was that we would have all these extras and horses and rats and things, and we weren't shooting because the sun was out.
Yeah, you do your best, like the city street, you line up to where you have a line of buildings that's facing south, so the sun kind of goes, and it's Czech Republic, it's not like it's, Mexico, so
Right.
It's like, it does this, so, it's only going to pop out like an hour and a half, so then we try to schedule something that's in a narrower alleyway or whatever, you know.
So I want to go back to the title character for a second and talk to Suzanne and Traci and David. When you're putting Bill Skarsgård in this full Nosferatu outfit, uniform, armor, what is this? I mean,
It's not a suit. It's literally, I think his body, he has over 18 individual pieces for his body itself. His hands are, 10 to 20 pieces on their own. And the head is another 9 pieces. So you can imagine the amount of time and the amount of energy with those people, 6 people running around him. Putting all these things, and there is a system, and Bill's used to that system, to sitting up, standing, in the chair with the head, the hands. So there becomes a sort of an understanding of how it's going to work, like a dance. It's quite intense though.
Suzanne, when do you come in on the full body Nosferatu? Are you doing finishing touches, or is there any part of it?
No, there's no marking. Nothing.
This is all day.
It's all in.
Yeah.
And as far as the makeup, how do you simulate the look of people from that time if all you have to work with are modern things? Do you go back and figure out chemically what was it made of?
That's a very good question. You kind of work with color and texture to create realistic things. So it's not necessarily the products they used, because you're not duplicating the products, you're duplicating the look.
Can you hold it a little closer? So, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you say that part again? I'm sorry.
You work with texture and color because you're trying to create a look. It's not duplicating products they had, because there really wasn't a lot of products in the 1830s.
Is there what was the size of the costume shop? Like, did you have costumes for extras ready?
Well, what is true of Robert's films is that at the beginning of each of them, I go out and look for costuming that we can use on crowd, and inevitably, because the location is so specific, and the time is so specific, and the look is so specific, that there's usually not very much to rent. So we end up making, for instance, in the Hunadoran Inn in the village scene, we could rent certain pieces, but we also had to make a number of pieces, and a lot of hand embroidery, a lot of machine embroidery, where if the characters were sort of more in the background. Inside the inn, for instance, the women, the men that you see there, the women's extraordinary headdresses, Granny, the woman who played the innkeeper's wife, for instance, just figuring out how to do that particular headpiece was really mind-blowing. And to have it so that it can come on and off, which is not the way that it would have been, sort of realistically. So we actually end up making, even for crowd, a great deal, but all of the costuming that you see on the principals, from the skin out, including their jewelry, their boots, their shoes, male and female, their linens, it's all made for them, and a lot of it is actually hand-stitched. Not necessarily in Nosferatu. If you don't see them take it off, then we did do machine stitching. But all of the embroidery and the top stitching and the embellishment is done by hand. So we had a workroom, I think, of about 85 people, incredibly talented tailors and embroiderers and seamstresses. And our breakdown team did both aging, dyeing, and distressing. Orlok's costume, for instance, we had 3 complete costumes for the potential for photo double or stunt double. So all of that had to be corpsified and in stages. And then we had our incredible on-set team as well, because as you can imagine, women in long dresses on beaches, or blood, rats, all of the different things that come up in film. They are taking care of all of that and making the actress comfortable, but also always coming back to a clean start, and having everything look as either beautiful or terrifying or whatever. So.
And so every costume is made, and I guess to fit the performer who's wearing it. Like, you can't just grab it and go, here, wear this.
No, it's all very plotted. So Robert and I spent a lot of time going through the script and figuring out who is wearing what when, what is appropriate. Robert starts each of the projects with an incredible wealth of information in lookbooks that we get. And so that's the basis of the research, and then it becomes very specific. Because the pieces have to be made, and so I try to find either manuals of the period or journals, because this is set, Nosferatu is set in Germany. That was a particular challenge, to try and find men's and women's wear journals from either 1838 or earlier, depending on how up to the minute the fashion had to be. Like, for instance, the Hardings, obviously very up to the minute, and a lot of different changes. With Ellen, a little bit less recent. But everything was in German, and I don't speak German, and I don't read German. So actually trying to contact libraries or places that would have these journals took quite a long time. And then also with all of the Romanian and Transylvanian costuming, that was really challenging, because neither Robert nor I read Romanian. So we were looking for people who could translate, people that could illuminate, because, a couple of times we were looking at images that we ended up finding out, well, actually, that's, here, you need to go further, and you need to go over here. And, as we get closer to filming whatever scene, the urgency for finding out exactly what we need to make, because these things take time to make, they're not simple by any means. So really, the research goes on throughout the entire process of filming, and it's incredibly satisfying.
We're running out of time, but I have to ask a couple more questions. And one of them is about an aspect of the production design, the calligraphy, the paper, and the hands that are doing calligraphy, not in English either. How is all of that handled? And are we seeing the hands of the actors doing calligraphy? Do you have a calligraphy hand double? Like, what is it all made of?
That's actually more of a Robin Jarin, but yes, we have calligraphy. We have calligraphy. Was a hand up. Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, how they slipped them in, so that you thought that Heather was actually signing the contract. It was used to, but I was just involved in making the contract itself.
Nick worked on practicing his signature with the calligraphy, but it wasn't up to snuff. So
It's tough. It's really tough.
Very tough.
We had a couple of calligraphers do the Dacian contracts, the German, so we had a couple of different people. So we had different hands as well.
Well, I wanted to close by bringing it back to Robert. This is I think, a great film. It's my favorite one of your movies. And I know that you've been living with it for so long, and no artist is able to entirely explain why something spoke to them or why it stayed in their head for such a long time. So instead, I'll ask you, when you look at the finished product up there on the screen, and you think about the fact that it's gone out into the world now, and it's going to be out in the world forever, without telling people how to feel or what to think, is there anything that you could say to them about what is your wish for this movie? Like, how do you hope that they will think about this movie?
I just, the thing that I like about fairy tales, folk tales, mythology, is that everyone in this audience is can get something different out of it. There's a reason why Hansel and Gretel and King Lear and Oedipus keep being told over and over again, because they always work and they mean different things in different times in our lives, and just can always be, reinterpreted. So whatever you take from the movie is what I wish for you to take from it.
All right. Thanks for coming out, everybody. Thanks for